Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when this finds you. Hope everybody's having a great day if you've already started. Hope you have a great day if you haven't. And welcome back to the regulars, and welcome if this is your first time. I want to talk about an issue um, that's been very prevalent in Christian doctrine, and that's that passage from the Sermon on the Mount where the Messiah said to turn the other cheek. Now, in all of my study, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a made up doctrine in the way that it's used and taught today. I could be wrong, but I never saw that in the Torah. And since we still have the Torah, um, I think some of the things are still in place. I've talked about in the past about certain laws that were no longer valid, but moral laws never changed. The Messiah said he didn't come to destroy or abolish the Torah. He said he came to fulfill the Torah. So, like I said, the moral laws are still intact from the Torah. We don't see a lot of people. I mean, you do have it in some religious sects where they practice polygamy still and concubinage and things like that. But, that stuff was done away with. And, but we see a lot of people trying to get us, especially as black people, to turn the other cheek. And you've heard me mention on a previous video about the slave Bible. And that was basically to keep black slaves in check. And because, we have, some other, some whites that have been slaves before. That's the word slave comes from word Slav, as a Slavic people. But there was no slave Bible ever made or put in place for white people. Slave Bible was put in place for black people. So you have a lot of people who want to talk about their New Testament Christians. And my question is always, why do we still have the Old Testament if things in it are not valid? Of course, we don't take up and offer the animal sacrifices anymore because the Messiah is the lamb. He was our sacrifice. Because in the Torah, David slew Goliath. Samson destroyed the Philistines. Moses killed the Egyptian. People always want to tell black folks to forgive the people who wronged them, but the people who do wrong to black people are never taught to stop treating black people in a way that requires forgiveness. Newscasters, if you pay attention after an incident, newscasters always want to, if something has happened to a black person, they always want to get in black people's face with their cameras and microphone and ask a black person, if you forgive, do you forgive this person that killed your loved one? But if you pay attention, when other cultures have a similar situation, the newscasters never get in their face and ask them, do they forgive them? If someone is in an abusive relationship, are they supposed to turn the other cheek and continue to be abused until they get hurt even more or even worse, killed? If you are at work and the boss discriminates against you, harasses you, or curses you out, are you supposed to just continue to allow that behavior because the modern Bible doctrine in the Sermon on the Mount says to turn the other cheek? You notice I said modern doctrine. If a friend or family member continues to misuse or mistreat you, are you supposed to turn the other cheek and allow them to continue to treat you that way? You see, a lot of Christians think because someone forgave them, that means they are allowed to continue treating that person that way. They're allowed to continue that behavior. And, if your child is being mistreated or bullied at school, do you tell your child to just let the other child, and in some cases even the teacher, to just let them keep doing it? If someone is molesting a young person, do you tell a young person that the Christian thing to do is to allow that adult to keep violating them? If your spouse belittles you on a constant basis, do you tell them to just keep allowing that disrespect to take place? I know there are many people who say infidelity is the only reason for divorce as a Christian. But the Bible also says to not be unequally yoked to another person. Do you think if someone literally walked up to you, slapped you as hard as they could, the Messiah wanted you to regain your composure, stand up, and then turn to the other side and allow them to slap you again? If a man hit your wife or a man hit your child, are you supposed to be so much of a Christian and accept the lot that he has just imposed on you and your family? If a man slaps your mother in your presence, do you say, well, I'm a Christian, I shouldn't retaliate and defend my mother? Come on. Ain't no man worth his salt gonna sit there and allow that to happen. I don't even care if it was Mike Tyson that hit your mama. Muhammad Ali hit your mama. You ain't supposed to sit there and let that go. Ain't no man gonna allow another man to physically abuse his wife or children. No man that's worth anything. Does that verse really mean we should just take the pain? Does it mean that we take it and be the bigger person? Is our Christian love going to change that behavior? According to theologian N.T. Wright, let me get what he said. To be struck on the right cheek in that world almost certainly meant being hit with the back of the right hand. That's not just violence, but an insult. It implies that you are inferior, perhaps a slave, a child, or, in that world, and sometimes even today, a woman. What's the answer? Hitting back only keeps the evil in circulation. Offering other cheek implies, hit me again if you like, but now as an equal, not an inferior. See, that's the end of that. In my study, as I keep studying, that turning the other cheek is a mental command, not a physical one. See, what the Messiah was saying in this context, in my understanding, is that you stand firm on righteousness. But in no way can I understand he was saying that we should tolerate abuse. He was saying to be the stronger person. I mean, if we go with what's being taught from our pulpit, and I keep telling you what pulpit rhyme with, this verse implies that we should just be passive and continue to let people just do us wrong. But isn't the Messiah the same one that said if you don't have a sword to sell your cloak and buy one? So is the Messiah confused? Turn the other cheek means ignoring snide or rude comments. Or it can mean if someone is talking to you with disrespect, you can simply respond, is that how you do things? Is that how you speak to people? See, Christians would have you believe that we're just supposed to be mamby-pamby type people. No backbone, no spine, like some wet piece of spaghetti. Go along to get along. How do you get along with people whose whole objective is to disrespect and demean you at every turn? If we're supposed to physically allow abuse, how do we explain this? I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and gentle as doves. That's Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. You see, Christians love to quote that turn the other cheek so they can get away with behavior that's despicable. How else do you explain things like Christians have done historically? Should black folks turn the other cheek to Christians that lynched them and their ancestors? Should black folks turn the other cheek to Christians who enslaved their ancestors? Should black folks have turned the other cheek when the KKK was burning crosses in their front yards, burning their homes down, and burning their communities down? Y'all do know the KKK was a Christian organization, don't you? And it was Christians riding into those black neighborhoods, burning down homes and churches. Should black folks have turned the other cheek when they were spit on by Christians? Should all of these altar boys in these churches turn the other cheek for the sexual abuse done to them by Christians? See, Christians want to tell other people to turn the other cheek, but these same Christians won't stop the behavior that does harm to others. They won't address the behavior that does harm to others. They knowingly participate in damaging behavior and think because they go to church on Sunday, all is well. Are you still calling yourself a Christian after all these videos I've been sharing? There are Christians out there who treat people like dirt all week, every day of the week. Then they go to church on Sunday like they've been like State Farm, a good neighbor. They put on a facade in front of their fellow Christian brothers and sisters, and based on what I saw growing up, all them Christians putting on facades for each other on Sunday morning. And they go, after they leave church, they go right back out into the world and continue mistreating people. Should you passively welcome or tolerate those coming to steal, kill, and destroy? What did the widow say in Luke 18:3? Grant me justice against my adversary. See, this widow wasn't about to give up and let her enemy take advantage of her. So through the proper channels, she pursued self-defense. See, Paul engaged in self-defense every now and then. Even though he did it in non-violent ways. When he was about to be, flogged by them Romans over in Jerusalem. He let the centurion know, hey, man, hey, look here, bro. I'm a Roman citizen. And, when we read the Sermon on the Mount, and it says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, we automatically think that we should be passive. No, if we read properly and understand context, the Messiah is telling us we don't do wrong for wrong. It doesn't mean you don't defend yourself against wrongdoing. It's like someone breaks into your house and you find out later that whom it was. That doesn't mean you find out where that person lives and break into their home. Or if someone does something to a loved one and you were not there in the moment it happened. Once you find out, you don't seek them out to return justice or harm to them. See, the Father says vengeance is His. But you are allowed to protect and defend your loved ones if it happens in the moment. See, you are the shepherd of your loved ones. And a shepherd's duty and responsibility is to protect the sheep. See, the Messiah wasn't about violence, but he did believe in self-defense. Remember, when the disciple cut off the soldier's ear, the Messiah told him to holster his sword, or sword, however you say it. And the Messiah said, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. He's saying if you live your life with violence, you're going to suffer a violent fate. See, the Messiah even told Pilate, if my men were violent, they would have already handled business up in here. He said, but it was because that he wasn't of this world, so it wasn't going to be handled that way. But he said his boys could throw down if they needed to. That's what he was letting Pilate know. Say, but we to turn the other cheek, right? Were those men, women, and children that were put on those slave ships by Christians supposed to turn the other cheek when those Christian slave dealers who were employed by those who claimed our identity were raping all of them? Were those blacks supposed to turn the other cheek when those Christian slave dealers were eating their fellow human brothers and sisters? You see, history tries to tell us that blacks were cannibals, but real history teaches otherwise. I haven't read it yet, but my buddy Dana told me about a book titled The Delectable Negro. Delectable Negro. And it talks about, how they were eating blacks. Delectable Negro. So Dana told me about that book, and I hadn't read it yet, but it's on my list. And down in Florida, Ron DeSantis, said slavery was good for black folks. And black folks upset with DeSantis, and rightfully so. But guess what? Christians also believe slavery was good for black folks, but black folks still attend Christian churches. I know a lot of Christians who love to say turn the other cheek, and that's why they love the New Testament only. See, That Old Testament, that Torah wasn't turning no other cheek. And see, I have a suspicion that this verse was originally not part of the Sermon on the Mount, or it was a different translation before the Europeans, with all of their wickedness, got their hands on it. I mean, because you got to think, look at colonization. Who did the colonizing? Europeans. And so, you've heard some black folks say, they came in with the Bibles and we had the wealth, and when they left, we had the Bible, they had the wealth. No, they came in with wickedness and religion. And they gave us religion because our ancestors had the Bible. Our ancestors had relationship. You heard me do another video on relationship versus religion. And so I just believe it was a different translation. I mentioned earlier when I first started how Samson dealt with those Philistines. I mentioned David and Goliath. But see, most pastors and Bible scholars overlook something. Many of them teach that Goliath had 5 stones because he had doubt. But see, David always had a relationship with Yah. So doubt wasn't a part of his makeup. Remember, he talked about how he had killed before? You remember David told Goliath that Yah was his weapon? See, other pastors teach the reason he chose 5 stones was to represent faith, obedience, service, prayer, and the Holy Ghost. Nah. Let me tell you the real reason David had 5 stones. It was because Goliath had 4 brothers. And David was going to kill all of them if he had to. Have you read chapter 34 in Genesis? Did Simon and Levi turn the other cheek? No. They killed every man in the city. And then the other brothers went and took everything of value out of the city because of what Shechem had did to their sister Dinah. They killed everybody. Now, if you want to get a little bit more detail on that story, go read chapter 34 in the book of Jasher. Speaking of the book of Jasher, chapter 54, verse 5. Now, I want to read something from there. This is Judah talking to Joseph. Dost thou not know what 2 of my brethren, Simeon and Levi, did unto the city of Shechem and unto 7 cities of the Amorites on account of our sister Dinah, and also what they would do for the sake of their brother Benjamin? See, Judah was telling Joseph, my brother's going to kill you. And in the very next verse, Judah said, and I with my strength, who am greater and mightier than both of them, I am greater and mightier than both of them, come this day upon thee and thy land, if thou art unwilling to send our brother. See, Judah told Joseph, if you try to keep my brother Benjamin, I'm going to kill you. Judah literally told Joseph in verse 8, if he didn't let Benjamin go, they were going to kill everybody in the city. See, Joseph, tried to assert himself with Judah. Because Joseph is the prince. Joseph got power. Joseph got all these men around him. And Joseph told Judah, I got a lot of valiant men. And Judah replied to him and said, if I take out my sword, I'm not going to put it back in the sheath until we have killed everybody in Egypt. He said, everybody in Egypt. And then Judah told him, and then once I finish with the people, I'm going to kill you. And then when I kill you, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill Pharaoh. Does that sound like turning the other cheek? See, I hear some of you, that's old school Testament beliefs. Well, is it? Because later on, Judah tells Joseph, look, I have no issue with you. God is with us, and we have no desire whatsoever to fight with you. Just let our brother go. See, Judah was trying to turn the other cheek, wasn't he? Because Judah was pleading with Joseph. Hey, man, I don't want to get violent if I don't have to. But if you don't act right, you're going to get these act rights. And so Judah was letting know, hey, man, If you don't do this, you're gonna get these hands. See, you know why a lot of these pastors preach turn the other cheek on in a passive sense? It's because they're trying to do everything to stop men from being men. See, men are shepherds, therefore protectors. But see, pastors want to label themselves as the shepherds. See, but if you tell them, if you tell men they should turn the other cheek to abuse, you emasculate them. Telling them to turn the other cheek programs them to accept tyranny from people whose ultimate objective is to abuse them. All of these so-called Christian pastors in this country, and not one of them has organized anything to stand for the people. They tell us to obey the government at all costs, basically turn the other cheek and let politicians abuse us. Between Congress and the Senate, there are 535 people controlling all of us, and your pastors around this country say and do nothing. Every major city in this country has more than 500 churches. So that means we have at least 500 so-called godly men turning the other cheek to misuse and abuse, but stand up in their pulpits on Sundays and encourage us to vote for these demons, Republicans and Democrats. If just the pastors in one city got together, some things would change. But your pastors do not care. They have the biggest voices in every city, and they have the largest podiums in every city. But they do nothing to fight for the people.